Hitting at the first row of columns, Rand made himself walk in among them. There could be no turning back now, no looking back. What is supposed to happen in here? What does it really do? Clear as the finest glass, perhaps a foot thick and standing 3 paces or more apart, the columns were a forest of dazzling light, filled with cascading ripples and glares and odd rainbows. The air was cooler here, enough to make him wish he had a coat, but the same gritty dust covered the smooth white stone under his boots. Not a breeze stirred, yet something made each hair on his body shift, even under his shirt. Ahead and to the right, he could just see another man in the grays and browns of Aiel, stiff and statue still in the changing lights. That must be Muradin, Fuladin's brother, stiff and still. Something was happening. Strangely, considering the brilliance, Rand could make out the Aiel's face clearly. Eyes wide and staring, face tight, mouth quivering on the brink of a snarl. Whatever he was seeing, he did not like it. But Muradin had survived that far, at least. If he could do it, Rand could. The man was 6 or 7 paces ahead of him at best. Wondering why he and Matt had not seen Muradin go in, he took another step. He rode behind a set of eyes, feeling but not controlling the body. The owner of those eyes crouched easily among the boulders on a barren mountainside, beneath a sun-blasted sky, peering down at strange half-made stone structures. No, less than half-made. That's Viridian, but without any fog. It only just begun. Bearing down contemptuously. He was Mondine, young for a Sept chief at 40. Separateness faded. Acceptance came. Mondine. You must agree, Zealdra said, but for the moment he ignored her. The Djinn had made things to draw up water and spill it into great stone basins. He had fought battles over less water than one of those tanks held, with people walking by as though water was of no consequence. A strange forest of glass rose in the center of all their activity, glittering in the sun, and near it the tallest tree he had ever seen, at least 3 spans high. Their stone structures looked as if each was meant to contain an entire whole, an entire set, when done. Madness. This Viridian could not be defended, not that anyone would attack the Djinn, of course. Most avoided the Djinn as they avoided the accursed lost ones, who wandered searching for the songs they claimed would bring back lost days. A procession snaked out of Viridian toward the mountain. A few dozen Djinn and 2 palanquins, each carried by 8 men. There was enough wood in each of those palanquins for a dozen chiefs' chairs. He had heard there were still Aes Sedai among the Djinn. You must agree whenever they ask us, Zealdra said. He looked at her then, wanting for a moment to run his hands through her long golden hair, seeing the laughing girl who had laid the bridal wreath at his feet, asked him to marry her. She was serious now, though, intent and worried. Will the others come? He asked. Some. Most. I have talked to my sisters in a dream, and we have all dreamed the same dream. The chiefs who do not come, and those who do not agree, their sects will die on that. Within 3 generations, they will be dust.
Hey, John McDonald, how you doing? Just rolling a couple roach joints up.
He did not like her talking to the wise ones.
Do a couple hits out of my
dreams.
dab
The wise
pins.
ones dreamed true. When they knew, it was true. Stay here, he told her. If I do not return, help our sons and daughters to hold this up together. She touched his cheek. I will, shade of my life. But remember, you must agree. Mondine motioned, and 100 veiled shapes followed him down the slope, ghosting from boulder to boulder, bows and spears ready, grays and browns blending with the barren land, vanishing even to his eyes. They were all men,
Oh, yeah.
the women of the sept who carried the spear, with the men around Zealdra. If anything went wrong, and she decided on something senseless to save him, The men would probably follow her in it. The women would see her back to the hold, whatever she wanted, to protect the hold and the set. He hoped they would. Sometimes they could be fiercer than any man and more foolish. The procession from Roydion had stopped on the cracked clay, flat by the time he reached the lower slope. He motioned his men to ground and went on alone, lowering his veil. He was aware of other men moving out from the mountain to his right and left, coming across the baked ground from other directions. How many? 50? Maybe 100? Some faces he had expected to see were missing. The Eldro was right as usual. Some had not listened to their wise one's dreams. There were faces he had never seen before, faces of men he had tried to kill, men who had tried to kill him. At least none were veiled. Killing in front of a Gen was almost as bad as killing a Gen. He hoped the others remembered that. Treachery from one, and the veils would be donned. The warriors each chief had brought would come down from the mountains. This dry clay would be muddied with blood. He half expected to feel a spear through his ribs any moment. Even trying to watch 100 possible sources of death, it was hard not to stare at the Aes Sedai as the bearers lowered their ornately carved chairs to the ground. Women with hair so white it almost seemed transparent. Ageless faces with skin that looked as if the wind might tear it. He had heard the years did not touch Aes Sedai. How old must these two be? What had they seen? Could they remember when his great father Comrade first found Ogier steading in the Dragon Wall and began to trade with them? Or maybe even when Comrade's great father Roderick led the Aiel to kill the men in iron shirts who had crossed the Dragon Wall. The Aes Sedai turned their eyes on him, sharp blue and dark, dark brown. The first dark eyes he had ever seen, and seemed to see inside his skull, inside his thoughts. He knew himself chosen out and did not know why. With an effort, he pulled away from those twin gazes, which knew him better than he knew himself. A gaunt, white-haired man, tall and stooped, came forward from the Gen, flanked by two graying women who might have been sisters with the same deep-set green eyes and the same way of tilting their heads when they looked at anything. The rest of the Gen stared uneasily at the earth rather than at the Aiel, but not these three. "I am Dermot," the man said in a deep, strong voice, his blue-eyed scrutiny as steady as any Aiel's. "These are Modern and Narissa." He gestured to the women beside him in turn. "We speak for Roydia and the Gen Aiel." A stir ran through the men around Mondine. Most of them, like the Gen claiming to be Aiel, no better than he did. "Why have you called us here?" he demanded, though it burned his tongue to admit being summoned. Instead of answering, Dermot said, "Why do you not carry a sword?" That brought angry mutters. "It is forbidden," Mondine growled. "Even Gen should know that." He lifted his spears, touched the knife at his waist, the bow on his back. "These are weapons enough for a warrior." The mutters became approving, including some from men who had sworn to kill him. They still would, given the chance, but they approved of what he had said. And they seemed content to let him talk with those Aes Sedai watching. "You do not know why," Mordain said, and Narissa added, "There is too much you do not know, yet you must know." "What do you want?" Mondine demanded. "You." Dermot ran his eyes across the Aiel, making that one word fit them all. "Whoever would lead among you must come to Roydia and learn where we came from, why you do not carry swords. Who cannot learn will not live." "Your wise ones have spoken to you," Mordain said, "or you would not be here. You know the cost to those who refuse." Charandin pushed his way out to the front, alternately glaring at Mondine and the Gen. Mondine had put that long, puckered scar down his face. They had nearly killed each other 3 times. "Just come to you," Charandin said. "Whichever of us comes to you will lead the Aiel." "No." The word came thin as a whisper, but strong enough to fill every ear. It came from the dark-eyed Aes Sedai, sitting in her carved chair with a blanket across her legs, as if she felt cold under the broiling sun. That one will come later, she said.
Give me 1 second. I'll be right back, and then we'll do a couple of dabs under the dab pen.
Of the blood, but not raised by the blood, he will come from Rodion at dawn, and tie you together with bonds you cannot break. He will take you back, and he will destroy you. Some of the Sept chiefs moved as if to leave, but none took more than a few steps. Each had listened to the wise one of his sect. Agree, or we will be destroyed as if we never were. Agree, or we will destroy ourselves. This is some trick, Charndon shouted. Under Aes Sedai stares, he lowered his voice, but it held anger yet. You mean to gain control of the sects? I've been need to no man or woman. He jerked his head, avoiding the Aes Sedai's eyes. To no one, he muttered. We seek no control, Narissa told him. Our days dwindle, Morgaine said. A day will come when the Gen are no more, and only you will remain to remember the Aiel. You must remain, or all is for nothing and lost. The flatness of her voice, the calm sureness, silenced Charndon, but Mundine had one more question. Why? If you know you're doomed, why do this? He gestured toward the structures rising in the distance. It is our purpose, Dermot replied calmly. For long years we searched for this place, and now we prepare it. If not for the purpose we once thought. We do what we must and keep faith. Mundine studied the man's face. There was no fear in it. You are Aiel, he said, and when some of the other chiefs gasped, he raised his voice. I will go to the Gen Aiel. You may not come to Rodion aught, Dermot said. Mundine laughed aloud at the temerity of the man, asking an Aiel to go unarmed. Shedding his weapons, he stepped forward. Take me to Rodion, Aiel. I will match your courage. Rand blinked in the flickering lights. He had been Mundine. He could still feel contempt for the Gen, fading into admiration. Were the Gen Aiel, or were they not? They had looked the same, tall, with light-colored eyes and sun-darkened faces, dressed in the same clothes except for lacking veils. But there had not been a weapon among them save for simple belt knives, suitable for work. There was no such thing as an Aiel without weapons. He was farther into the columns than a single step could account for, and closer to Muradin than he had been. The Aiel's fixed stare had become a dire frown. Gritty dust crunched under Rand's boots as he stepped forward. His name was Roderick, and he was nearly 20. The sun was a golden blister in the sky, but he kept his veil up and his eyes alert. His spears were ready, one in his right hand, 3 held with his small bullhide buckler. And he was ready. Jordan was down on the brown grass flat to the south of the hills, where most of the bushes were puny and withered. The old man's hair was white, like that thing called snow the old ones talked of, but his eyes were sharp. Watching the well diggers haul up filled water bags would not occupy all of his attention.
Do some
Mountains rose to the
some key lime pie.
the northern range tall and sharp and white-tipped, but dwarfed by the eastern monsters. Those looked as if the world was trying to touch the heavens, and perhaps did. Maybe that white was snow? He would not find out. Faced with this, the Gen must decide to turn east. They had trailed north along that mountainous wall for long months, painfully dragging their wagons behind them, trying to deny the Aiel that followed them. At least there had been water when they crossed a river, even if not much. It had been years since Roderick had seen a river he could not wade across. Most were only cracked, dry clay away from the mountains. He hoped the rains would come again and make things green once more. He remembered when the world was green. He heard the horses before he saw them, 3 men riding across the brown hills in long leather shirts, sewn all over with metal discs, 2 with lances. He knew the one in the lead, Garum, son of the chief of the town, just out of sight, back the way they came, and not much older than himself. They were blind, these townsmen. They did not see the Aiel who stirred after they passed, then settled back to near invisibility in the sear land. Roderick lowered his veil. There would be no killing unless the riders began it. He did not regret it, not exactly, but he could not make himself trust men who lived in houses and towns. There had been too many battles of that kind. The stories said it had always been so. Garum drew rein, raising his right hand in salute. He was a slight, dark-eyed man, like his 2 followers, but all 3 looked tough and confident. "Oh, Roderick, have your people finished filling their water skins yet?" "I see you, Garum." He kept his voice level and it made him uneasy seeing them, even more so than their carrying swords. The Aiel had pack animals, but there was something unnatural about sitting atop a horse. A man's legs were good enough. "We are close. Does your father withdraw his permission for us to take water on his lands?" No other town had ever given permission before. Water had to be fought for if men were near, just like everything else. And if there was water, then men were near. It would not be easy to take these 3 by himself. He shifted his feet in readiness to dance, likely die. "He does not," Garum said. He had not even noticed Roderick's shift. "We have a strong spring in the town, and my father says that when you go, we will have the new wells we have dug until we go ourselves. But your grandfather seemed to want to know if the others started to move, and they have." He leaned an elbow on the front of his saddle. "Tell me, Roderick, are they truly the same people as yourselves?" "They are the Aiel. We, the Aiel. We are the same, yet not. I cannot explain it further, Garum." He did not really understand it himself. "Which way do they move?" Jordan asked. Roderick bowed to his grandfather calmly. He had heard a footfall, the sound of a soft boot, and had known it for an Aiel's. The townsmen had not noticed Jordan's approach, though. They jerked their reins in surprise. Only Garum's unflung hand stopped the other 2 from lowering their lances. Roderick and his grandfather waited. "East," Garum said, when he had his horse under control again. "Across the spine of the world." He gestured to the mountains that stabbed the sky. Roderick winced, but Jordan said coolly, "What lies on the other side?" "The end of the world, for all I know," Garum replied. "I'm not sure there is a way across." He hesitated. "The Jen have Aes Sedai with them. Dozens, I have heard. Does it not make you uneasy, traveling close to Aes Sedai? I have heard the world was different once, but they destroyed it." The Aes Sedai made Roderick very nervous, though he kept his face blank. There were only 4, not dozens, but enough to make him remember stories that the Aiel had failed the Aes Sedai in some way that no one knew. The Aes Sedai must know. They had seldom left the Jen's wagons in the years since their arrival, but when they did, they looked at the Aiel with sad eyes. Roderick was not the only one who tried to avoid them. "We guard the Jen," Jordan said. "It is they who travel with Aes Sedai." Garum nodded as if that made a difference, then leaned forward again, lowering his voice. "My father has an Aes Sedai advisor, who tries to keep it from the town. She says we must leave these hills and move east. She says the dry rivers will run again, and we will build a great city beside one. She says many things. I hear the Aes Sedai plan to build a city. They have found Ogier to build it for them. Ogier!" He shook his head, pulling himself from legends back to reality. "Do you think they mean to rule the world once more? The Aes Sedai? I think we should kill them before they can destroy us again." "You must do as you think. Jordan's voice gave no hint of his own thoughts. I must ready my people to cross those mountains. The dark-haired man straightened in his saddle, plainly disappointed. Roderick suspected he wanted Aiel help in killing Aes Sedai. The spine of the world, Garm said brusquely. It has another name. Some call it the Dragon Wall. A fitting name, Jordan replied. Roderick stared at the towering mountains in the distance. Fitting name for Aiel. Their own secret name, told to no one, was People of the Dragon. He did not know that, only that it was not quite when he received his spears. What lay beyond this dragon wall? At least there would be people to fight. There always were. In the whole world, there were only Aiel, Jen, and enemies. Only that. Aiel, Jen, and enemies. Rand drew a deep breath that rasped as if he had not breathed for hours. Eye-splitting rings of light ran up the columns around him. The words still echoed in his mind. Aiel, Jen, and enemies. That was the world. They had not been in the waste, certainly. He had seen, lived, a time before the Aiel came to their threefold land. He was nearer still to Mirrodin. The Aiel's eyes shifted uneasily, and he seemed to struggle against taking another step. Rand, squatting easily on the white-cloaked hillside, Jordan ignored the cold that ran toward him. Three cloaked men, two women in bulky dresses, making hard work of the snow. Winter should have been over long since, according to the old ones, but then they told stories of the seasons changing from what they had always been. They claimed the earth used to shake, too. The mountains rose or sank like the water in a summer pond when you threw a rock in. Jordan did not believe it. He was 18, born in the tents. This was the only life he had ever known. The snow, the tents, the protect. He lowered his veil and stood slowly, leaning on his long spear so as not to frighten the wagon folk. But they stopped abruptly anyway, staring at the spear, at the bow slung across his back, and the quiver at his waist. None appeared any older than himself. You have need of us, Jen? He called. You name us that to mock us, a tall, sharp-nosed fellow shouted back. But it is true. We are the only true Aiel. You have given up the way. That is a lie, Jordan snapped. I have never held a sword. He drew a deep breath to calm himself. He had not been put out here to grow angry with Jen. If you are lost, your wagons are there. He pointed southward with his spear. One placed a hand on Sharp-Nose's arm and spoke quietly. The others nodded, and finally Sharp-Nose did too, if reluctantly. She was pretty, with yellow wisps of hair escaping the dark shawl wrapped around her head. Facing Jordan, she said, We are not lost. She appeared to him suddenly, seeming to see him. Tightened her shawl around her. He nodded. He thought they were. The Jen usually managed to avoid anyone from the tents, even when they needed help. The few who did not came only in desperation, for the help they could not find elsewhere. Follow me. It was a mile across the hills to his father's tents, low shapes partially covered by the last snowfall, clinging to the slopes. His own people watched the new arrivals cautiously, but did not stop what they were doing, whether cooking or tending weapons or tossing snowballs with a child. He was proud of his sept, and there were 200 people, largest of the 10 camps scattered north of the wagons. The Jen did not seem much impressed, though. It irritated him that there were so many more Jen than Aiel. Lewin came out of his tent, a tall, graying man with a hard face. Lewin never smiled, they said. And Jordan had certainly never seen it. Maybe he had before Jordan's mother died of a fever, but Jordan did not believe it. The yellow-haired woman, her name was Moyne, told a story much as Jordan had expected. The Jen had traded with a village, a place with a log wall. Then men from the village had come in the night, taking back what had been traded for, taking more. The Jen always thought they could trust people who lived in houses, always thought the way would protect them. The dead were listed, fathers, mothers, brothers. The captives, first sisters, a sister mother, a daughter. That last surprised Jordan. It was Morin who spoke bitterly of a 5-year-old daughter carried off to be raised by some other woman. Studying her more closely, he mentally added a few years to her age. We will bring them back, Lewin promised. He took a bundle of spears handed to him and thrust them point down into the ground. You may stay with us if you wish, so long as you are willing to defend yourselves and the rest of us. If you stay, you will never be allowed back among the wagons. The sharp-nosed fellow turned at that and hurried back the way they had come. Lewin went on. It was seldom that only one left at this point. Those who wish to come with us to this village, take a spear. But remember, if you take the spear to use against men, you will have to stay with us. His voice and eyes were stone. You will be dead as far as the Jen are concerned. One of the remaining men hesitated, but each finally pulled a spear from the ground. So did Morin. Jordan gaped at her, and even Lewin blinked. You do not have to take a spear just to stay, Lewin told her, or for us to bring back your people. Taking the spear means a willingness to fight, not just to defend yourself. You can put it down. There is no shame. They have my daughter, Morin said. To Jordan's shock, Lewin barely paused before nodding. There is a time for all things. For all things. So be it. He began tapping men on the shoulder, walking through the camps, naming them to visit this log-walled village. Jordan was the first tapped. His father had always chosen him first, since the day he was old enough to carry a spear. He would have had it no other way. Morin was having problems with the spear, the haft dangling in her long skirts. You do not have to go. No woman ever has to go. We will bring your daughter to you. I mean to bring Karen out of there myself, she said fiercely. You will not stop me. Stubborn. In that case, you must dress like this. He gestured to his own gray-brown coat and breeches. You cannot walk cross-country in the night in a dress. He took the spear away from her before she could react. The spear is not easily learned. The two men who had come with her, awkwardly receiving instruction and nearly falling over their own feet, were proof of that. He found a hatchet and chopped a pace from the spear shaft, leaving 4 feet, counting nearly a foot of steel point. Stab with it. No more than that. Just stab. The haft is used for blocking, too, but I will find you something to use as a shield in your other hand. She looked at him strangely. How old are you? She asked, even more oddly. He told him, and she only nodded thoughtfully. After a moment, he said, Is one of those men your husband? They were still tripping over their spears. My husband mourns Kieran already. He cares more for the trees than his own daughter. The trees. The trees of life. When he still looked at her blankly, she shook her head. 3 little trees planted in barrels. They care for them almost as well as they do for themselves. When they find a place of safety, they mean to plant them. They say the old days will return then. They. I said they. Very well. I am not Jen anymore. She hefted the shortened spear. This is my husband now. Eyeing him closely, she asked, If someone stole your child, would you talk of the way of the leaf and suffering sent to test us? He shook his head, and she said, I thought not. You will make a fine father. Teach me to use this spear. An odd woman, but pretty. He took the spear back and began to show her, working out what he was doing while he did. With the short haft, it was quick and agile. Morn was watching him with that strange smile, but the spear had caught him up. I saw your face in the dream, she said softly. But he did not really hear. With a spear like this, he could be quicker than a man with a sword. In his mind's eye, he could see the Aiel defeating all the men with swords. No one would stand against them. No one. Lights flashed through the glass columns, half blinding Rand. Muradin was only a pace or two ahead, staring straight in front of him, teeth bared, snarling silently. The columns were taking him back, into the time-lost history of the Aiel. Rand's feet moved of their own accord, forward, back in time. Lewin adjusted the dust devil across his face and peered down into the small camp where the coals of a dying fire still glowed beneath an iron cookpot. The wind brought him a smell of half-burned stew. Mounds of blankets surrounded the coals in the moonlight. There were no horses in sight. He wished he had brought some water, but only the children were allowed water, except with meals. He vaguely remembered a time when there had been more water, when the days were not so hot and dusty and the wind had not blown all the time. Night was only a small relief, trading a dull, fiery red sun for cold. He wrapped himself tighter in the cape of wild goatskins he used for a blanket. His companions scrambled closer, bundled of heels, kicking rocks and muttering until they were sure they would wake the men below. He did not complain. He was not used to this so many. He never see their faces, but he could make out who was who. Luca, with his shoulders half again as wide as anyone else's, he liked to play tricks. Giron, lanky as a stork and the best runner among the wagons. Charlin and Elijah, alike as reflections except for Charlin's habit of tilting his head when he was worried, as he was now. Their sister Colleen was down in that camp, and my Gran, Lewin's sister. When the girls' gathering bags were found on ground torn by a struggle, everyone else was ready to mourn and go on as they had done so many times before. Even Lewin's great father. If Aidan had known what the five of them planned, he would have stopped them. All Aidan did now was mutter about keeping faith with the Aes Sedai Lewin had never seen, that and try to keep the Aiel alive. The Aiel as a people, but not any one given Aiel. Not even my Gran. There are 4, Lewin whispered. The girls are this side of the fire. I will wake them quietly, and we will sneak them away while the men sleep. His friends looked at each other, nodded. He supposed they should have made a plan before this, but all they had been able to think of was coming to get the girls, and how to leave the wagons without being seen. He had not been certain they could follow these men, or find them before they reached the village they came from, a collection of rough huts where the Aiel had been driven away with sticks and stones. There would be nothing to be done if the takers got that far. What if they do wake? Giron asked. I will not leave Khalid, Charlin snapped, right on top of his brother's quieter. We are taking them back, Giron. We are, Lewin agreed. Luca poked Giron's ribs, and Giron nodded. Making their way down in the darkness was no easy task. Drought-dried twigs snapped under their feet. Rocks and pebbles showered down the dry slope ahead of them. The harder Lewin tried to move silently, the more noise he seemed to make. Luca fell into a thorn bush that cracked loudly, but managed to extract himself no more than heavy breathing. Charlin slipped and slid halfway to the bottom, but nothing moved below. Short of the camp, Lewin paused, exchanging anxious looks with his friends, then tiptoed in. His own breath sounded thunderous in his ears, as loud as the snores coming from one of the 4 large mounds. He froze as the rough snorts stopped, and one of the mounds heaved. It settled, the snoring began again, and Lewin let himself breathe. Carefully, he crouched beside one of the smaller heaps and flipped aside a rough woolen blanket stiff with dirt. My Gran stared up at him, face bruised and swollen, her dress torn to little better than rags. He clapped a hand over her mouth to keep her from crying out, but she only continued to stare blankly, not even blinking. I'm going to carve you like a pig, boy. One of the larger mounds tumbled aside, and a wild bearded man in filthy clothes got to his feet, a long knife in his hand glittering dully in the moonlight, picking up the red glow of the coals. He kicked the mounds to either side of him, producing grunts and stirrings. Just like a pig. Can you squeal, boy? Or do you people just run? Run, Lewin said, but his sister only stared dully. Frantic, he seized her shoulders, pulled to try starting her toward where the others were waiting. Run! She came out of the blanket stiffly, almost a dead weight. Pauline was awake. He could hear her whimpering, but she seemed to be drawing her dirty blankets around her even more tightly, trying to hide in them. My Gran stood there, staring at nothing, seeing nothing. Seems you cannot even do that. Grinning, the man was coming around the fire, his knife held low. The others were sitting up in their blankets now, laughing, watching the fun. Lewin did not know what to do. He could not leave his sister. All he could do was die. Maybe that would give my Gran a chance to run. Run, my Gran! Please, run! She did not move. She did not even seem to hear him. What had they done to her? The bearded man came closer, taking his time, chuckling, enjoying his slow advance. No! Charlin came hurtling out of the night, throwing his arms around the man with the knife, carrying him to the ground. The other men bounded to their feet. One, his head shaved and shining in the pale light, raised a sword to slash at Charlin. Lewin was not sure exactly how it happened. Somehow he had the heavy kettle by its iron handle swinging. It struck the shaved head with a loud crunch. The man collapsed as if his bones had melted. Off balance, Lewin stumbled trying to avoid the fire and fell beside it, losing the cookpot. A dark man, with his hair in braids, lifted another sword, ready to skewer him. He scrambled away on his back like a spider, eyes on the sword's sharp point, hands searching frenziedly for something to fend the man off. A stick, anything. His palm fell on rounded wood. He jerked it around, pushed it at the snarling man. The man's dark eyes widened. The sword dropped from his grasp. Blood poured from his mouth. Not a stick, a spear. Lewin's hands sprang away from the haft as soon as he realized what it was. Too late. He crawled backward to avoid the man as he fell, stared at him, trembling. A dead man. A man he had killed. The wind felt very cold. After a time, it came to him to wonder why one of the others had not killed him. He was surprised to see the rest of his friends there around the coals. Giron and Luca and Elijah, all panting and wild-eyed above their dust veils. Pauline still emitted soft, sniffling sobs from beneath her blankets, and my Gran still stood staring. Charlin was huddled on his knees, holding himself, and the four men, the villagers. Lewin stared from one motionless, bloody shape to another. We killed them. Luca's voice shook. We, mercy of the light, be with us now. Lewin called to Charlin and touched his shoulder. Are you hurt? Charlin fell over. Red wetness slicked his hands, gripping the hilt of the knife driven into his belly. It hurts, Lewin, he whispered. He shuddered once, and the light went out of his eyes. What are we going to do? Giron asked. Charlin is dead, and we... Light, what have we done? What do we do? We will take the girls back to the wagons. Lewin could not pull his eyes away from Charlin's glazed stare. We will do that. They gathered up everything that was useful, the cookpot and the knives mainly. Metal things were hard to come by. We might as well, Elijah said roughly. They certainly stole it from someone just like us. When Elijah Started to pick up one of the swords, though. Lewin stopped him. No, Elijah. That is a weapon, made to kill people. It has no other use. Elijah said nothing, only ran his eyes over the 4 dead bodies, looked at the spears Luca was winding with blankets to carry Charlin's body on. Lewin refused to look at the villagers. A spear can put food in the pots, Elijah. A sword cannot. It is forbidden by the way. Elijah was still silent, but Lewin thought he sneered behind his dust veil. Yet when they finally started away into the night, the swords remained by the dying coals and the dead men. It was a long walk back through the darkness, carrying the makeshift stretcher bearing Charlin, the wind sometimes gusting to raise choking clouds of dust. My grand stumbled along, staring straight ahead. She did not know where she was or who they were. Colleen seemed half terrified, even of her own brother, jumping if someone touched her. That was not how Lewin had imagined their return. In his mind, the girls had been laughing, happy to return to the wagons. They had all been laughing, not carrying Charlin's corpse, not hushed by the memory of what they had done. The lights of the cook fires came into view, and then the wagons, harnesses already spread for men to take their places at sunrise. No one left the shelter of the wagons after dark, so it surprised Lewin to see 3 shapes come hurrying toward them. Adam's white hair stood out in the night. The other 2 were Nerine, Colleen's mother, and Sarah Lynn, his and my grand's. Lewin lowered his dust veil with foreboding. The women rushed to their daughters with comforting arms and soft murmurs. Colleen sank into her mother's embrace with a welcoming sigh. My grand hardly appeared to notice Sarah Lynn, who looked close to tears at the bruises on her daughter's face. Aidan frowned at the young men, permanent creases of worry deepening in his face. In the name of the light, what happened? When we found you were gone too. He trailed off when he saw the stretcher holding Charlin. What happened? He asked again, as if dreading the answer. Lewin opened his mouth slowly, but my grand spoke first. They killed them. She was staring at something in the distance, her voice as simple as a child's. The bad men hurt us. They. Then Lewin came and killed them. You must not say things like that, child, Sarah Lynn said, soothingly. You. She stopped, peering into her daughter's eyes, then turned to stare uncertainly at Lewin. Is it true? We had to, Elijah said in a pained voice. They tried to kill us. They did kill Charlin. Aidan stepped back. Killed? Killed men? What of the Covenant? We harm no one. No one. There is no reason good enough to justify killing another human being. None. They took my grand, great father, Lewin said. They took my gran and Colleen and hurt them. There is no reason, Aidan roared, shaking with rage. We must accept what comes. Our sufferings are sent to test our faithfulness. We accept and endure. We do not murder. You have not strayed from the way. You have abandoned it. You are Dashane no longer. You are corrupt, and I will not have the Aiel corrupted by you. Leave us, strangers. Killers! You are not welcome in the wagons of the Aiel. He turned his back and strode away as if they no longer existed. Sarah Lynn and Nerine stared after him, guiding the girls. Mother, Lewin said, and flinched when she looked back at him with cold eyes. Mother, please! Who are you that addresses me so? Hide your face from me, stranger. I had a son once, with a face like that. I do not wish to see it on a killer. And she led my gran after the others. I am still Aiel, Lewin shouted, but they did not look back. He thought he heard Luca crying. The wind rose, picking up dust, and he veiled his face. I am Aiel! Wildly darting lights poured into Rand's eyes. The pain of Lewin's loss still clung to him, and his mind tumbled furiously. Lewin had not carried a weapon. He had not known how to use a weapon. Killing terrified him. It did not make sense. He was almost abreast of Muradin now, but the man was not aware of him. Muradin's snarl was a rictus. Sweat beaded on his face. He quivered as though wanting to run. Rand's feet took him forward and back. Chapter 26. The Dedicated. Forward and back. Aiden lay in the sandy hollow, clutching his dead son's weeping children, shielding their eyes against his ragged coat. Tears rolled down his face, too, but silently, as he peered cautiously over the edge. At 5 and 6, my Gran and Lewin deserved the right to cry. Aiden was surprised he had any tears left himself. Some of the wagons were burning. The dead lay where they had fallen. The horses had already been driven off, except for those still hitched to a few wagons that had been emptied onto the ground. For once, he took no notice of the crated things the Aes Sedai had given into Aiel's charge, toppled carelessly into the dirt. It was not the first time he had seen that, or dead Aiel. But this time he could not care. The men with the swords and spears and bows, the men who had done the killing, were loading those empty wagons with women. He watched Rhea, his daughter, shoved up into a wagon box with the others, crowded together like animals by laughing killers. The last of his children. Elwyn, dead of hunger at 10. Sorel at 20 of fever, her dreams told her was coming. And Jarin, who threw himself off a cliff a year ago at 19, when he found he could channel. Marin, this morning. He wanted to scream. He wanted to rush out there and stop them from taking his last child. Stop them somehow. And if he did rush out, they would kill him and take Rhea anyway. They might well kill the children, too. Some of those bodies sprawled in their own blood were small. My Gran clutched at him, as if she sensed he might leave her, and Lewin stiffened as if he wanted to hold tighter but thought himself too old. Aiden smoothed their hair and kept their faces pressed against his chest. He made himself watch, though, until the wagons wheeled away, surrounded by whooping riders, after the horses that were already almost out of sight toward the smoking mountains that lined the horizon. Only then did he stand up, crying to "Wait here for me," he told them. "Wait until I come back." Clinging to each other, they stared at him with tear-stained white faces, nodded uncertainly. He walked out to one of the bodies, rolled over gently. Serdar could have been asleep, her face just the way it appeared beside him when he woke. It always surprised him to notice gray in her red gold hair. She was his love, his life, and ever young and new to him. He tried not to look at the blood soaking the front of her dress or the gaping wound below her breasts. "What do you mean to do now, Aiden? Tell us that! What?" He brushed Sirdar's hair from her face. She liked to be neat. And stood, turning slowly to confront the knot of angry, frightened men. Sulwyn was the leader, a tall man with deep-set eyes. He had let his hair grow, as if to hide being a number of men had. It made no difference to these last raiders, or those who had come before. "I mean to bury our dead and go on, Sulwyn." His eyes drifted back to Serdar. "What else is there?" "Go on, how can we go on? There are no horses. There is almost no water, no food. All we have left are wagons full of things the Aes Sedai will never come for. What are they, Aiden? What are they that we should give our lives to haul them across the world, afraid to touch them even? We cannot go on as before." "We can," Aiden shouted. "We will. We have legs. We have backs. We will drag the wagons if need be. We will be faithful to our duty." He was startled to see his hand his fist. A fist. His hand trembled as he unclenched it and put it down by side. Sulwyn stepped back, then held his ground with his companions. "Now, Aiden, we are supposed to find a place of safety, and some of us mean to do that. My great-father used to tell me stories when I was a boy. Stories of when we lived in safety and people came to hear us sing. We mean to find a place where we can be safe and sing again. Sing? Aiden scoffed. I've heard those old stories too. That Aiel singing was a wondrous thing. But you know those old songs no more than I do. The songs are gone, and the old days are gone. We will not give up our duty to the Aes Sedai to chase after what is lost forever. Some of us will, Aiden. The others behind Sulwyn nodded. We mean to find that safe place. And the songs, too. We will. A crash whipped Aiden's head around. More of Sulwyn's cronies were unloading one of the wagons, and a large flat crate had fallen, half breaking open to reveal what looked like a polished door frame of dark red stone. Other wagons were being emptied too, and by more than Sulwyn's friends. At least a quarter of the people he saw were hard at work clearing wagons of everything but food or water. Do not try to stop us, Sulwyn cautioned. Aiden made his fist loosen again. You are not Aiel, he said. You betray everything. Whatever you are no longer Aiel. We keep the way of the leaf as well as you, Aiden. Go! Aiden shouted. Go! You are not Aiel. You are lost. Lost! I do not want to look at you. Go! Sulwyn and the others refused to get away from him. His heart sank lower as he surveyed the wagons and the dead lying among the litter. So many dead, so many wounded moaning as they were tended. Sulwyn and his lost ones were taking some care in their unloading. The men with the swords had broken open crates until they realized there was no gold inside, no food. Food was more precious than gold. Aiden studied the stone doorframe, tumbled piles of stone figurines, odd shapes and crystal standing among the potted chora cuttings Sulwyn's folk had no use for. Was there a use for any of it? Was this what they were being faithful for? If it was, then so be it. Some could be saved. There was no way to tell what Aes Sedai might consider most important. But some could be saved. He saw Migran and Luwin clutching their mother's skirts. He was glad Saralyn was alive to look after them. His last son, her husband, the children's father, had died from the very first arrow that morning.
There's wrong one, John.
He would save the Aiel whatever it took. Kneeling, he gathered Sirdra in his arms. We are still faithful, Aes Sedai, he whispered. How long must we be faithful? Putting his head down on his waxed breast, he wept. Tears stung Rand's eyes. Silently he mouthed, Sirdra. The way of the leaf? That was no Aiel belief.
Probably not.
He could not think clearly. He could hardly think at all. The lights
It's almost
spun faster
midnight.
and
It's
faster.
way too late to be eating.
Beside him, Muradin's mouth was open in a soundless howl.
Oh, you can go ahead and make
Aiel's
one.
eyes bulged as if witnessing.
I'm
the
not
death of
going
everything.
to.
They stepped forward together. Jonai stood at the edge of the cliff, staring out westward over the sun-sparkled water. 100 leagues in that direction lay Comel. Had lain Comel. Comel had clung to the mountains overlooking the sea. 100 leagues west, where the sea now ran. If Alnora were still alive, perhaps it would have been easier to take. Without her dreams, he scarcely knew where to go or what to do. Without
I don't
her,
want to make
he
one,
hardly
bro.
cared to live. He felt every gray
I'm not
hair as he
hungry,
turned
so I
to
have
trudge
no
back to
reason
the
to make
wagons,
one.
waiting a mile away.
And besides, it's way too
Fewer
late to be
wagons
eating.
now, and showing where. Fewer people, too. A handful of thousands where there had been tens. But too many for the remaining wagons. No one
Don't have
rode
no
now, save
tortillas,
children too small to walk. Aiden met him at the first wagon, a tall young man, his blue eyes too wary. Jonai always expected to see Willem if he looked around quickly enough. But Willem had been sent away, of course, years ago, when he began to channel no matter how hard he tried to stop. The world had too many men channeling still. They had to send away boys who showed the signs. They had to. but he wished he had his children back. When had his soul
No, still
died?
not could get me to make a sandwich.
So little to be laid in a hastily dug hole.
I don't
Placed
know
with
what your
sickness there was
obsession
no
with
Aes Sedai to
sandwiches
heal.
is.
There are Ogier, father, Aiden said excitedly. Jonai suspected that his son had always thought his stories of the Ogier were just that, stories. They came from the north. It was a bedraggled band Aiden led him to, no more than 50 in number, hollow-cheeked, sad-eyed, tufted ears drooping. He had become accustomed to his own people's drawn faces, worn, patched clothing, but seeing the same on Ogier shocked him. Yet he had people to care for and duties to discharge for the Aes Sedai.
Oh, the only dabs I
How
got
long
are
since he had seen an Aes Sedai? Just after Elnora
some
died.
dab pins.
Too late for Elnora. The woman had healed the sick who still lived, taken some of the sangreal, and gone on her way, laughing bitterly when he asked her where there was a place of safety. Her dress had been patched and worn at the hem. He was not sure she had been sane. She claimed one of the Forsaken was only partly trapped, or maybe not at all. Ishamael still touched the world, she said. She had to be as mad as the remaining male Aes Sedai.
Okay.
He pulled his mind back to the Ogier as they stood unsteady on their great legs. His thoughts wandered too much since Elnora's death. They had bread and bowls in their hands. He was shocked to feel a prick of anger that someone had shared their meager stock of food. How many of his people could eat on what 50 Ogier could consume? No. To share was the way. To give freely. 100 people? 200? You have Torah cuttings, one of the Ogier said. His fingers gently brushed the trefoil leaves and the plants tied to the side of a wagon. Some, Aiden said. They die, but the old folk keep new wagons until they do.
That was a rough
He had no time for trees. He had people to look after. How bad is it in the north?
Bad.
An Ogier woman replied.
The blighted lands have grown southward, and there are murdrawl in sight.
I thought they were all dead. Not north then. They could not turn north, south. The Sea of Jaren lay 10 days south, or did it any longer? He was tired.
You have come from the east?
Another Ogier asked. He wiped his bowl with a heel of bread and gulped it down.
How is it to the east?
Jonai replied. Perhaps not so bad for you, though. 10? No. 12 days ago, some people took a third of our horses before we could escape. We had to abandon wagons. That pained me. Wagons left behind, and what was in them. Things the Aes Sedai had placed in Aiel charge. That it was not the first time only made it worse. Almost everyone we meet takes things, whatever they want. Perhaps they will not be so with Ogier, though.
Perhaps,
An Ogier woman said, as if she did not believe it. Jonai was not certain he did either. There was no safe place.
do you know where any of this cutting are?
Jonai started. No. No, I do not. But surely you can find the steading.
We have run so far, so long.
And Ogier, back in the huddle, said. And another added in a mournful rumble.
The land has changed so much. I think we must find a steading soon or die.
The first Ogier woman said.
I feel a longing in my body. We must find a steading. We must.
I cannot help you, Jonai said sadly. He felt a tightness in his chest. The land changed beyond knowing. Changing still so the plain covered last year might be mountains this. The blighted lands growing, Murdral and Trollocs still alive. People stealing. People with faces like animals. People who did not recognize Deshane or know them. He could barely breathe. The Ogier lost. The Aiel lost. Everything lost. The tightness broke in pain, and he sank to his knees, doubled over, clutching his chest. A fist held his heart, squeezing. Aiden knelt beside him worriedly. Father, what is it? What is the matter? What can I do? Jonah managed to squeeze his son's frayed collar and pull his face close.
Take the people south.
He had to force the words out in spasms that seemed to be ripping his heart out. Father, you are the one who...
Listen, listen. Take them south. Take the Aiel to safety. Keep the Covenant. Guard what the Aes Sedai gave us until they come for it. The way of the leaf. You must.
He had tried. So Linda Sedai must understand that. He had tried. Oh, Nora. Oh, Nora. The name faded.
Hey,
the pain
Babylon,
in
how you
Rand's
doing?
chest loosened. No sense. It made no sense. How could these people be Aiel? The columns flashed in blinding pulses. The air stirred, swirling. Beside him, Muradin's mouth stretched wide in an effort to scream. The Aiel clawed at his veil, clawed at his face, leaving deep, bloody scratches. Forward. Jonai hurried down the empty streets, trying not to look at shattered buildings and dead chora trees. All dead. At least the last of the long-abandoned Joe cars had been hauled away. Aftershocks still troubled the ground beneath his feet.
Hope you're doing
He
good
wore his
tonight,
work clothes, his
Babylon.
cut and sore, of course, though the work he had been given was nothing he had been trained for. He was 63, in the prime of life, not yet old enough for gray hairs, but he felt a tired old man. No one questioned his entering the hall of the servants. There was no one at the great columned entrance to question anyone, or give greeting. Plenty of people darted about inside, arms filled with papers or boxes, eyes anxious, but none so much as looked at him. There was a feel of panic about them, and it grew by increments every time the ground shook. Distressed, he crossed the anteroom and trotted up the broad stairs. Mud stained the silvery white Elstone. No one could spare time. Perhaps no one cared. There was no need to knock at the door he sought. Not one of the great gilded doors to an ingathering hall, but a plain door and unobtrusive. He slipped in quietly, though, and was glad he had. Half a dozen Aes Sedai stood around the long table arguing, apparently not noticing when the building trembled. They were all women. He shivered, wondering if men would ever stand in a meeting such as this again. When he saw what was on the table, the shiver became a shudder. A crystal sword, perhaps an object of the power, perhaps only an ornament, he had no way of telling, held down the dragon banner of Lu's Theron Kinslayer, spread out like a tablecloth and spilling onto the floor. His heart clenched. What was that doing here? Why had it not been destroyed, in memory of the cursed man as well? What good is your foretelling? Orcelle was almost shouting. If you cannot tell us when. Her long black hair swayed as she shook with anger. The world rests on this, the future, the wheel itself. Dark-eyed Deendra faced her with a more usual calm. I am not the creator. I can only tell you what I foretell. These sisters. Celinda was the calmest of them all, her old-fashioned strife gown only a pale blue mist. The sun-red hair falling to her waist was nearly the color of his own. His great father had served her as a young man, but she looked younger than he. She was Aes Sedai. The time for contention among ourselves is past. Jarek and Aendar will both be here by tomorrow. Which means we cannot afford mistakes, Celinda. We must know. Is there any chance of... Jonai stopped listening. They would see him when they were ready. He was not the only one in the room besides the Aes Sedai. Someshta sat against the wall near the door, a great shape seemingly woven of vines and leaves, his head a little above Jonai's even so. A fissure of withered brown and charred black ran up the Nim's face, and furrowed the green mass of his hair, and when he looked at Jonai, his hazelnut eyes seemed troubled. When Jonai nodded to him, he fingered the rift and frowned. Do I know you? He said softly. I'm your friend, Jonai replied sadly. He had not seen Someshta in years, but he had heard of this. Most of the Nim were dead, he had heard. You rode me on your shoulders when I was a child. Do you remember nothing of it?
Singing,
Sameshta said.
was there singing? So much is gone.
The Aes Sedai say some will return.
You are a child of the dragon, are you not?
Jonai winced. That name had caused trouble, no less for not being true. But how many citizens now believed the Daishain Aiel had once served the dragon and no other Aes Sedai?
Jonai,
He turned at the sound of Celinda's voice, went to one knee as she approached. The others were still arguing, but more quietly.
all is in readiness, Jonai.
She asked. All Aes Sedai. Celinda Sedai. He hesitated, took a deep breath. Celinda Sedai. Some of us wish to remain. We can serve still. Do you know what happened to the Aiel at Sora? He nodded, and she sighed, reaching out to smooth his short hair,
Oh,
as
yeah.
if he were a child.
Of course you do.
You, Daishain, have more courage than 10,000 Aiel linking arms and singing, trying to remind a madman of who they were and who he had been, trying to turn him with their bodies and a song. Jarek Momdoran killed them. He stood there, staring as though at a puzzle, killing them. They kept closing their lines and singing. I am told he listened to the last Aiel for almost an hour before destroying him. And then Zora burned. One huge flame consuming stone and metal and flesh. There is a sheet of glass where the second greatest city in the world once stood. Many people had time to flee Aes Sedai. The Daishain earned them time to flee. We are not afraid. Her hand tightened painfully in his hair. The citizens have already fled Arendis and Jonai. Besides, the Daishain yet have a part yet to play. If Deendra could only see far enough to say what. In any case, I mean to save something here, and that something is you. As you say, he said reluctantly. We will care for what you have given into our charge until you want them again. Of course, the things we gave you. She smiled at him and loosened her grip, smoothing his hair once more before folding her hands. You will carry the things to safety, Jonai. Keep moving, always moving, until you find a place of safety where no one can harm you. As you say, Aes Sedai. What of Kumin, Jonai, as he called? He did not know any way but to tell her. He would rather have bitten his tongue out. My father is hiding somewhere in the city. He tried to talk us into resisting. He would not listen, Aes Sedai. He would not listen. He found an old shock lance somewhere, and he could not go on. He expected her to be angry, but her eyes glistened with tears. Keep the covenant, Jonai. If the Daishain lose everything else, see they keep the way of the leaf. Promise me. Of course, Aes Sedai, he said, shocked. The covenant was the Aiel, and the Aiel were the covenant. To abandon the way was to abandon what they were. Kumin was an aberration. He had been strange since he was a boy, it was said. Hardly Aiel at all, though no one knew why. Go now, Jonai. I want you far from Paradisen by tomorrow. And remember, keep moving. Keep the Aiel safe. He bowed where he knelt, but she was already being drawn back into the argument. Can we trust Kodam and his fellows, Celinda? We must, Nasser. They are young and inexperienced, but barely touched by the taint, and we have no choice. Then we will do what we must. The sword must wait. Sameshta, we have a task for the last of the Nim, if you will do it. We have asked too much of you.
I'll be
Now
right
we must
back.
ask more. Jonai bowed his way out formally as the Nim rose, his head brushing the ceiling. Already immersed in their plans, they were not looking at him, but he did them their last honor anyway. He did not think he would ever see them again. He ran from the hall of the servants all the way out of the city to where the great gathering waited. Thousands of wagons in 10 lines stretching nearly 2 leagues. Wagons loaded with food and water barrels. Wagons loaded with the crated things the Aes Sedai had given into Aiel charge. Angreal and Saangreal and Tirangreal. All the things that had to be kept from the hands of men going mad while they wielded the one power. Once there would have been other ways to carry them. Jokars and jumpers, hoverflies, and huge show wings. Now, painfully assembled horses and wagons had to suffice. Among the wagons stood the people, enough to populate a city, but perhaps all the Aiel left alive in the world. 100 came to meet him, men and women, the representatives demanding word of whether the Aes Sedai had granted leave for some to stay. No, he told them. Some frowned reluctantly, and he added, "We must obey. We are Dashain Aiel, and we obey the Aes Sedai." They dispersed back to their wagons slowly, and he thought he heard Kuman's name mentioned, but he could not let it trouble him. He hurried to his own wagon at the head of one of the center lines. The horses were all nervous, with the ground shaking at intervals. His sons were already up on the seat. Willem, 15, with the reins, and Aiden, 10, beside him, both grinning with nervous excitement. Little Asol lay playing with a doll on top of the canvas tied over their possessions, and, more important, their charges from the Aes Sedai. There was no room for any to ride but the young and the very old. A dozen rooted chora cuttings in clay pots sat behind the wagon seat, to be planted when they found a place of safety. A foolish thing to carry, perhaps, but no wagon was without its potted cuttings. Something from a time long gone. Symbol of a better time to come. People needed hope and symbols. Alnora waited beside the team, glossy black hair tumbling about her shoulders and reminding him of the first time he saw her as a girl. But worry had etched lines over her eyes now. He managed to smile for her, hiding the worry in his own heart. "All will be well, wife of my heart." She did not answer, and he added, "Have you dreamed?" "Of no time soon," she murmured. "All will be well. All will be well, and all manner of things will be well." Smiling tremulously, she touched his cheek. "With you I know it will be so, husband of my heart." Jonai waved his arms over his head, and the signal rippled down the lines. Slowly the wagons began to move, the Aiel leaving Parandising. Bran shook his head. Too much. Memories crowding together. The air seemed filled with sheet lightning. The wind swirled gritty dust into dancing whirlwinds. Mirrodin had clawed deep furrows in his face. He was digging at his eyes now. Forward. Kuman knelt at the edge of the plowed ground in his working clothes, plain brownish gray coat and breeches and soft-laced boots, in a line with others like him that surrounded the field. 10 men of the Dashain Aiel at twice stretched arm's length, and then an Ogier, all the way around. He could see the next field, lined the same way, beyond the soldiers with their shock lances sitting atop armored jokars. A hoverfly buzzed overhead in its patrol, a deadly black metal wasp containing 2 men. He was 16, and the woman had decided his voice was finally deep enough to join in the seed singing. The soldiers fascinated him, men and Ogier, the way a colorful, poisonous snake might. They killed. His father's great-father, Charn, claimed there had been no soldiers once, but Kuman did not believe it. If there were no soldiers, who would stop the Night Riders and the Trollocs from coming to kill everyone? Of course, Charn claimed there had not been any Myrddraal or Trollocs then either. No Forsaken, no Shadow Wrought. How many stories he claimed were from a time before soldiers and Night Riders and Trollocs, when he said the Dark Lord of the Grave had been bound away, and no one knew his name or the word war. Kuman could not imagine such a world. The war had been old when he was born. He enjoyed Charn's stories, even if he could not make himself believe, but some earned the old man frowns and scoldings, like when he claimed to have served one of the Forsaken once. Not just any Forsaken, but Lanfear herself. as well say he had served a Shamael. If John had to make up stories, Kuman wished he could say he had served Luz Theron, the great leader himself. Of course, everyone would ask why he was not serving the dragon now, but that would be better than the way things were. Kuman did not like the way citizens looked at Charn when he said that land fear had not always been evil. A stir at the end of the field told him one of the Nim was approaching. The great form, head and shoulders and chest taller than any Ogier, stepped out into the seeded ground, and Kuman did not have to see to know he left footprints filled with sprouting things. It was Someshta, surrounded by clouds of butterflies, white and yellow and blue. Excited murmurs rose from the townspeople, and the folk whose fields these were gathered to watch. Each field would have its Nim now. Kuman wondered if he could ask Someshta about Charn's stories. He had spoken to him once, and Someshta was old enough to know if Charn was telling the truth. The Nim were older than anyone. Some said the Nim never died, not so long as plants grew. But this was no time to be thinking of questioning a Nim. The Ogier began it, as was fitting, standing to sing, great bass rumbles like the earth singing. The Aiel rose, men's voices lifting in their own song, even the deepest at a higher pitch than the Ogier's. Yet the songs braided together, and Someshta took those threads and wove them into his dance, gliding across the field in swooping strides, arms wide, butterflies swirling about him, landing on his spread fingertips. Kuman could hear the seed singing around the other fields, hear the women clapping to urge the men on. Their rhythm, the heartbeat of new life. But it was a distant knowledge. The song caught him up, and he almost felt that it was himself, not the sounds he made, that Someshta wove into the soil and around the seeds. Seeds no longer, though. Zemai's plants covered the field, taller wherever the Nim's foot had trod. No blight would ever touch those plants, nor any insect. Seed sung, they would eventually grow twice as high as a man and fill the town's grain barns. This is what he had been born for, this song and the other seed songs. He did not regret the fact that the Aes Sedai had passed him over at 10, saying he lacked the spark. To have been trained as Aes Sedai would have been wondrous, but surely no more so than this moment. The song faded slowly, the Aiel guiding its end. Someshta danced a few steps more after the last voices ceased, and it seemed the song still hung faintly in the air for as long as he moved. Then he stopped, and it was done. Kuman was surprised to see that the townspeople were gone, but he had no time to wonder where they had gone or why. The women were coming, laughing, to congratulate the men. He was one of the men now, not a boy any longer, though the women alternated between kissing him on the lips and reaching up to ruffle his short red hair. It was then that he saw the soldier, only a few steps away, watching them. He had left his shock lance and fan-cloth battle cape somewhere, but he still wore his helmet, like some monstrous insect's head, its mandibles hiding his face, though his black visor was raised. As if realizing he stood out, the soldier pulled off the helmet, revealing a dark young man, no more than 4 or 5 years older than Kuman. The soldier's unblinking brown eyes met his, and Kuman shivered. The face was only 4 or 5 years older, but those eyes. The soldier would have been chosen to begin his training at 10, too. Kuman was glad Aiel was spared that choosing. One of the Ogier, Tomata, came over, tufted ears slanted forward inquisitively.
Do you have news, Warlock? I saw excitement among the Jokars while we sang.
The soldier hesitated. I suppose I can tell you, though it is not confirmed. We have a report that Luz Theron led the companions on a strike at Shale Brule this morning at dawn. Something is disrupting communications, but the report is the bore has been sealed, with most of the Forsaken on the other side. Maybe all of them.
Then it is over,
Tomata breathed.
over at last. The light be praised.
Yes. The soldier looked around, suddenly seeming lost. I suppose it is. I suppose.
Hey, Fire, how you doing?
He peered at his hands.
I'm already on round 2, Fire.
He sounded weary. The local folk could not wait to begin celebrating. If the news is true, it might go on for days. I wonder if... No, they will not want soldiers joining in.
Hope all y'all are doing good out there.
For tonight, perhaps,
Tomata said.
but we have 3 more towns to visit before our circuit is done.
Of course. You still have work to do. You have that. The soldier looked around again. There are still Trollocs. Even if the Forsaken are gone, there are still Trollocs. And Night Riders. Nodding to himself, he started back toward the Jokars. Tomata did not appear excited at all, of course, but Kuman felt as stunned as the young soldier. The war was over? What would the world be like without war? Suddenly he had to talk to Jarn. Sounds of merrymaking rolled out to meet him before he reached the town, laughing, singing. The bells in the town hall tower began ringing exuberantly. Townspeople danced in the streets, men and women and children. Kuman dodged between them, searching. Jarn had elected to stay at one of the inns where the Aiel were putting up instead of coming to the singing. Even the Aes Sedai could no longer do much for the ache in his aged knees. But surely he would be out for this. Abruptly, something struck Kuman in the mouth and his legs buckled. He was pushing himself to his knees before he realized he was down. A hand put to his mouth came away bloody. He looked up to find an angry-faced townsman standing over him, nursing a fist. "Why did you do that?" he asked. The townsman spat at him. "The Forsaken are dead. Dead, do you hear? Landfear will not protect you anymore. We will root out all of you who serve the Forsaken while pretending to be on our side, and treat the lot of you as we treated that crazy old man." A woman was tugging at the man's arm. "Come away, Toma. Come away and hold your foolish tongue. You want the Ogier to come for you?" Suddenly wary, the man let her pull him away into the crowd. Struggling to his feet, Kuman began to run, heedless of the blood oozing down his chin. The inn was empty, silent. Not even the innkeeper was there, or the cook, or her helpers. Kuman ran through the building shouting, "Jarn! Jarn! Jarn!" Out back, maybe. Jarn liked to sit under the spice apple trees behind the inn and tell us stories of the days when he was young. Kuman ran out the back door and tripped, falling on his face. It was an empty boot that had caught his toe. One of Charn's red dress boots that he wore all the time, now that he no longer joined in the singing. Something made Kuman look up. Charn's white-haired body hung from a rope pulled over the ridgepole. 1 foot bare, where he had kicked his boot off, the fingers of one hand caught at his neck, where he had tried to pull the rope free. "Why?" Kuman said. "We are Dashane. Why?" There was no one to answer. Clutching the boot to his chest, he knelt there, staring up at Charn, as the noise of the revelry washed over him. Rand quivered. The light from the columns was a shimmering blue haze that seemed solid, that seemed to claw the nerves out of his skin. The wind howled, one vast whirlwind sucking inward. Muradin had managed to veil himself. Bloody sockets stared blindly above the black veil. The Aiel was chewing, and bloody froth dripped onto his chest. Forward. Charn made his way down the side of the wide, crowded street beneath the spreading chora trees, their trefoil leaves spreading peace and contentment in the shadows of silvery buildings that touched the sky. A city without choras would seem bleak as wilderness. Jokars hummed quietly down the street. A great white show wing darted across the sky, carrying citizens to Comel, or Tzora, or somewhere. He seldom used the show wings himself. If he needed to go very far, an Aes Sedai usually traveled with him. But tonight he would, to Majin. Today was his 25th naming day, and tonight he intended to accept Nala's latest offer of marriage. He wondered if she would be surprised. He'd been putting her off for a year, not wanting to settle down. It would mean changing his service to Zor-El Sedai, whom Nala served, but Miran Sedai had already given her blessing. He rounded a corner and just had time to see a dark, wide-shouldered man with a fashionably narrow beard before the man's shoulder sent him crashing to his back, head bouncing on the walkway, so he saw spots. Dazed, he lay there.
Watch where you are going.
The bearded man said irritably, adjusting his sleeveless red coat and flicking the lace at his wrists. His black hair, hanging to his shoulders, was gathered in back. That was the latest fashion, too, as near as anyone who had not sworn to the Covenant would come to imitating Aiel. The pale-haired woman with him laid a hand on his arm, her dress of shimmery white streath becoming more opaque with her sudden embarrassment. John, look at his hair. He is Aiel, John. Feeling his head to see if it was cracked, Charn's fingers brushed through short-cut reddish-gold hair. He gave the longer tail at his nape a tug in lieu of shaking his head. A bruise, he thought, but no more. So he is. The man's annoyance vanished in consternation. Forgive me, Dashane. I am the one who should be watching where he walks. Let me help you up. He was already suiting his words, hoisting Charn to his feet. Are you all right? Let me call a jump to take you where you are going. I am not hurt, citizen, Charn said mildly. Truly, it was my fault. It had been, hurrying like that. He could have injured the man. Did I harm you? Please forgive me. The man opened his mouth to protest. Citizens always did. They seemed to think Aiel were made of spin glass. But before he could speak, the ground rippled under their feet. The air rippled too in spreading waves. The man looked about uncertainly, pulling his stylish fan-cloth cloak around himself and his lady so their heads seemed to float disembodied. What is it, Dashane? The others who had seen Charn's hair were gathering around him anxiously, asking the same questions, but he ignored them, not even thinking of whether he was being rude. He actually began to push through the crowd, his eyes fixed on the Sharam. The white sphere, 1,000 feet in diameter, floated as high above the blue and silver domes of the column Don. Mirren had said today was the day. She said she had found a new source for the one power. Female Aes Sedai and male would be able to tap the same source, not
Yeah,
separate
you almost
paths.
stepped through.
What men and women could do united
There's
would be even
round two
greater
guy.
now that there would be no differences. And today she and Vidoman would tap it for the first time. The last time, men and women would work together wielding a different power. Today. What seemed a tiny chip of white spun away from the Sharam in a jet of black fire. It descended, deceptively slow, insignificant. Then 100 gouts spurted everywhere around the huge white sphere. The Sharam broke apart like an egg and began to drift down, falling, an obsidian inferno. Darkness spread across the sky, swallowing the sun in unnatural night. As if the light of those flames was blackness. People were screaming everywhere. With the first spurt of fire, Charn broke into a run toward the column Don. But he knew he was too late. He was sworn to serve Aes Sedai, and he was too late. Tears rolled down his face as he ran. Blinking to dispel the spots fluttering across his vision, Rand squeezed his head with both hands. The image still drifted through his head, that huge sphere, burning black, falling. Did I really see the hole being drilled into the Dark One's prism? Did I? He stood at the edge of the glass columns, staring out at Avendesora. A chora tree. A city is a wilderness without choras. And now there's only one. The columns sparkled in the blue glow from the dome of fog above, but once again the light seemed only brilliant reflections. There was no sign of Muradin. He did not think the Aiel had come out of the glass forest, or ever would. Suddenly something caught his eye, low in the branches of the Tree of Life. A shape swinging slowly. A man hanging from a pole laid across 2 branches by a rope around his neck. With a wordless roar, he ran for the tree, grabbing at Saidin, the fiery sword coming into his hands as he leaped, slashing at the rope. He and Matt hit the dusty white paving stones with twin thuds. The pole jarred free and clattered down beside them. Not a pole, but an odd black-hafted spear with a short sword blade in place of a spear point, slightly curved and single-edged. Rand would not have cared if it was made of gold and quaindiar set with sapphires and fire drops. Letting sword and power go, he ripped the rope away from Matt's neck and pressed an ear to his friend's chest. Nothing. Desperately, he tore open Matt's coat and shirt, breaking the leather cord that held a silver medallion on Matt's chest. He tossed the medallion aside, listened again. Nothing. No heartbeat. Dead. No! He'd be all right if I hadn't let him follow me here. I can't let him be dead. As hard as he could, he pounded his fist against Matt's chest. Listened. Nothing. Again he hammered. Listened. Yes. There. A faint heartbeat.
I got
What?
a backup road up, so,
So
maybe
faint,
like
so
that
slow.
here in a sec.
And slowing. But Matt was still alive despite the heavy purple welt around his neck. He might yet be kept alive. Filling his lungs, Rand scrambled around to breathe into Matt's mouth as strongly as he could. Again. Again. Then he leaped astride Matt, seized the waist of his breeches, and heaved upward, lifting his hips off the pavement. Up and down, 3 times, and then back to breathing into his mouth. He could have channeled. He might have been able to do something that way. The memory of that girl on the stone stopped him. He wanted Matt to live. Live, not be a puppet moved by the power. Once back in Emmons Field, he had seen Master Luhan revive a boy who had been found floating in the wine spring water. So he breathed and heaved, and prayed. Abruptly, Matt jerked, coughed. Rand knelt beside him as he put both hands to his throat and rolled onto his side, sucking air in an agonized rattle. Matt touched a piece of rope with one hand and shivered. Those flaming sons of goats, he muttered hoarsely. They tried to kill me. Who did? Rand asked, looking around warily. Half-finished palaces around the great littered square stared back at him. Surely Rodion was empty except for the 2 of them, unless Muradin was still alive somewhere. The folk on the other side of that twisted doorway. Swallowing painfully, Matt sat up and took a deep, unsteady breath. There's one here too, Rand. He still sounded as if his throat had been rasped. You could go through it? Did they answer questions? That could be useful. He desperately needed more answers. 1,000 questions and too few answers. No answers, Matt said huskily. They cheat. And they tried to kill me. He picked up the medallion, a silver fox head that almost filled his palm. And after a moment, stuffed it into his pocket with a grimace. I got something out of them at least. Pulling the strange spear to him, he ran his fingers along the black shaft. A line of some strange cursive script ran its length, bracketed by a pair of birds inlaid in metal even darker than the wood. Ravens, Rand thought they were. Another pair were engraved in the blade. With a rough, wry laugh, Matt levered himself to his feet, half leaning on the spear, the sword blade beginning just level with his head. He did not bother to lace up his shirt or button his coat. I'll keep this too. They're a joke, but I will keep it. A joke? Matt nodded. When it says, thus is our treaty written. Thus is agreement made. Thought is the arrow of time. Memory never fades. What was asked is given. The price is paid. A pretty joke, you see. I'll slice them with their own wit if I ever get the chance. I'll give them thought and memory. He winced, scrubbing a hand through his hair. Like that my head hurts. It's spinning like 1,000 bits of dreams, and every one a needle. Do you think Moraine will do something for it if I ask? I am sure she will, Rand replied slowly. That had to be hurting badly if he sought the Aes Sedai's help. He looked at the dark spear shaft again. Most of the script was hidden by Matt's hand, but not all. Whatever it was, he had no idea what it said. How had Matt? Rudion's empty windows stared at him mockingly. We hide many secrets still, they seemed to say. More than you know. Worse than you know. Let's go back now, Matt. I don't care if we have to cross the valley in the night. As you said, it will be cooler. I don't want to stay in here any longer. That sounds just fine to me, Matt said, coughing. As long as we can get another drink of water at that fountain. Rand kept his pace to Matt's, which was slow at first, hobbling along using the odd spear as a walking staff. He paused once to look at the two figurines of a man and a woman holding crystal spheres, but he left them there. Not yet. Not for a long time yet, if he was lucky. When they left the square behind, the unfinished palaces rearing along the street had a threatening look, their jagged tops like the walls of great fortresses. Rand embraced Sidene, though he saw no real threat. But he felt it, as though murderous eyes were boring into his back. Ridian lay peaceful and empty, shadowless in the blue glow of its fog roof. The dust in the streets rippled in the wind. The wind. There was no wind. No, burn me, Matt muttered. I think we're in trouble, Rand. It's what I get for staying around you. You always get me in trouble. The ripples came faster, sliding together to make thicker lines, quivering still. Can you walk faster? Rand asked. Walk? Blood and ashes, I can run. Slanting the spear across his chest, Matt suited his words with a lurching gallop. Running alongside, Rand brought his sword back, uncertain of what he could do with it against shivering lines of dust. Uncertain that there really was need. It was only dust. No, it bloody isn't. It's one of those bubbles. The Dark One's evil drifting along the pattern, seeking out bloody Taviran. I know it is. All around them dust rippled and shivered ever thicker, bunching and gathering. Suddenly, right in front of them, a shape reared up in the basin of a dry fountain, a solid man shape, dark and featureless, with fingers like sharp claws. Silently it leaped at them. Rand moved instinctively. The moon rises over water, and the blade of power sliced through that dark figure. In a twinkling, it was only a thick cloud of dust drifting toward the pavement. Others replaced it, though. Black faceless shapes, rushing in from all sides, no two alike, but all with reaching claws. Rand danced the forms among them, blade weaving intricate patterns in the air, leaving floating motes behind. Matt used his spear like a quarterstaff, a spinning blur, but bringing the sword blade into it as if he had always used the weapon. The creatures died, or at least returned to dust, but they were many and quick. Blood poured from Rand's face, the old wound in his side burned on the point of splitting open. Red spread across Matt's face, too, and down his chest. Too many and too quick. You do not do the 10th part of what you are capable of already. That was what Lanfear had told him. He laughed as he danced the forms. Learn from one of the Forsaken. He could do that, if not the way she intended. Yes, he could. He channeled, wove strands of the power, and sent a whirlwind in the middle of each black shape. They exploded in clouds of dust that left him coughing. As far as he could see, dust settled from the air. Hacking and panting, Matt leaned on his dark-shafted spear. Did you do that? He wheezed, wiping blood away from his eyes. About time. If you knew how, why didn't you bloody do it in the first place? Rand started to laugh again. Because I didn't think of it. Because I didn't know how until I did it. But it froze in his mouth. Dust drifted out of the air, and as it settled on the ground, it began to ripple. Run, he said. We have to get out of here. Run! Side by side, they sped for the fog, slashing at any lines of dust that seemed to be thickening, kicking at them, anything to keep them from coalescing. Rand sent whirlwinds swirling wildly in every direction. Dispelled dust began shivering back together immediately, even before it reached the ground now. They kept running into the fog and through, bursting out into dim, sharp-shadowed light. Side aching, Rand spun, ready to try lightning or fire, anything. Nothing came through the fog after them. Maybe the mist was a wall to those dark shapes. Maybe it held them in. Maybe. He did not
Give me
know.
1 sec, I'll be right back.
He did not really
Then we
care
do a
so long
couple
as the
dabs
guns
off
could
the
not
pin
follow.
and then start up on the backup
Matt
one.
muttered hoarsely. We were in there all night. It's nearly sunrise. I didn't think it was that long. Rand stared at the sky. The sun had not topped the mountains yet. A painfully brilliant nimbus outlined the jagged peaks. Long shadows covered the valley floor. He will come from Rorgion at dawn and tie you together with bonds you cannot break. He will take you back, and he will destroy you. Let's go back up the mountain, he said quietly. They will be waiting for us. For me. Chapter 27. Within the Ways. The darkness of the ways compressed the light of Perrin's pole lantern to a sharp-edged pool around himself and Gaul. The creak of his saddle, the gritty click of hooves on stone, seemed to reach no further than light's rim. There was no smell to the air, nothing. The Aielman strode along beside Stepper easily, keeping an eye on the dimly seen lantern glow from Loyal's party ahead. Perrin refused to call it Fail's. The ways did not seem to bother Gaul, for all their reputation. Perrin himself could not help listening, as he had for nearly 2 days, or what passed for days in this lightless place. His ears would be first to catch the sound that meant they were all going to die, or worse, the sound of wind rising where no wind ever blew. No wind but Machin-Shin, the black wind that ate souls. He could not help thinking that traveling the ways was slack-witted folly. But when need called, what was foolish changed. The faint light ahead stopped, and he drew rein in the middle of what appeared to be an ancient stone bridge, arching through utter blackness. Ancient because of the breaks in the bridge walls, the pits and shallow, ragged craters freckling the roadbed. Very likely, it had stood close to 3,000 years, but it seemed ready to fall now. Maybe right now. The pack horse crowded behind Stepper. The animals whickered to each other, rolled their eyes uneasily at the surrounding dark. Perrin knew how the horses felt. A few more people for company would have lifted some of the endless night's weight. Still, he would not have gone any closer to the lanterns ahead, even had he been alone. Not and risk a repeat of what happened back on that first island, right after entering the Waygate in Tyr. He scratched his curly beard irritably. He was not sure what he had expected, but not. The pole lantern bobbed as he stepped down from his saddle and led Stepper and the pack horse to the guiding, a tall slab of white stone covered with cursive silver inlays, vaguely reminiscent of vines and leaves, all pitted as if splashed with acid. He could not read it, of course. Loyal had to do that. It was Ogier script. And after a moment, he walked around it, studying the island. It was the same as the others he had seen, with a chest-high wall of white stone, simple curves and rounds, fitted in an intricate pattern. At intervals, bridges pierced the wall, arching out into the darkness, and railless ramps running up or down with no means of support he could see. There were cracks everywhere, ragged pits and shallow craters, as though the stone were rotting. When the horses moved, there was a grainy sound of stone flaking away beneath their hooves. Gaul peered into the dark with no visible nervousness, but then he did not know what might be out there. Perrin did, too well. When Loyal and the others arrived, Fail immediately hopped from her black mare and strode straight to Perrin, eyes intent on his face. He was already regretting making her worry, but she did not look worried at all. He could not have said what her expression was, besides fixed. Have you decided to talk to me instead of over my head? Her full-arm slap made spots dance in front of his eyes. What did you mean? She practically spat, charging in here like a wild boar. You have no regard. None. He took a slow, deep breath. I asked you before not to do that. Her dark, tilted eyes widened as if he had said something infuriating. He was rubbing his cheek when her second slap caught him on the other side, nearly unhinging his jaw. The Aiel were watching interestedly, and Loyal with his ears drooping. "I told you not to do that," he growled. Her fist was not very big, but her sudden plunge to his short ribs drove most of the air from his lungs, punching him over sideways, and she drew back her fist again. With a snarl, he seized her by the scruff of her neck and... Well, it was her own fault. It was. He had asked her not to hit him, told her. Her own fault. He was surprised she had not tried to pull one of her knives, though. She seemed to carry as many as Matt. She had been furious, of course. Furious with Loyal for trying to intervene. She could take care of herself, thank you very much. Furious with Bane and Pt.8 for not intervening. She had been taken aback when they said they did not think she would want them to interfere in a fight she had picked. "When you choose the fight," Bane had said, "you must take the consequences, win or lose." But she did not seem even the tiniest bit angry with him any longer. That made him nervous. She had only stared at him, her dark eyes glistening with unshed tears, which made him feel guilty, which in turn made him angry. Why should he be guilty? Was he supposed to stand there and let her hit him to her heart's content? She had mounted Swallow and sat there, very stiff back, refusing to sit gingerly, staring at him with an unreadable expression. It made him very nervous. He almost wished she had pulled the knife. Almost. "They're moving again," Gaul said. Perrin jerked back to the present. The other light was moving. Now it paused. One of them had noticed his light was not following yet. Probably Loyal. Fail might not mind if he got lost, and the two Aiel women had into walking a little way off with them. He had not needed the slight refuse. He heeled stepper forward, leading the pack horse. The guiding here was more pocked than most he had seen, but he rode on past it with only a glance. The light of the other lanterns was already starting down one of the gently sloping ramps, and he followed with a sigh. He hated the ramps. Sided only by darkness, it began to curve, down and around, with nothing discernible beyond the squashed light of the lantern swaying above his head. Something told him that a fall over the edge would never end. Stepper and the pack horse kept to the middle without any urging, and even Gaul avoided the brink. Worse, when the ramp ended on another island, there was no way to escape the conclusion that it lay directly beneath the one they had just left. He was glad to see Gaul glancing upward, glad he was not alone in wondering what held the islands up, and whether it was still sound. Once more Loyal and Fael's lanterns had stopped by the guiding, so he reined up again just off the ramp. This time they did not move on, though. After a few moments, Fael's voice called, "Perrin!" He exchanged looks with Gaul, and the Aiel shrugged. She had not spoken to Perrin since he... "Perrin, come here!" Not peremptory exactly, but not asking either. Bane and Pt.8 were squatting easily beside the guiding, and Loyal and Fael sat their horses close by, pole lanterns in hand. The Ogier had their pack horses lead line. His ear tufts twitched as he looked from Fael to Perrin and back again. She, on the other hand, seemed completely absorbed in adjusting her riding gloves
Skyrim nice.
of soft green leather with golden falcons
Might have
embroidered on their
to
backs.
download that again.
She had
I've been
changed her
playing,
dress, too. The new one was cut in the
Gotham
same
Knights.
fashion, with a high neck and narrow divided skirts. But it was a dark green brocaded silk, and somehow
It's
it
been
seemed to
between
emphasize the
Gotham
bosom.
Knights
Perrin had
and
never seen the dress before.
Titan Quest.
"What do you want?" he asked warily. She looked up as if surprised to see him, tilted her head thoughtfully, then smiled as though it had just occurred to her. "Oh, yes. I wanted to see if you could be taught to come when I call." Her smile deepened. It had to be because she had heard his teeth grinding. He scrubbed at his nose. There was a faint, rank smell here. Gaul chuckled softly. "As well we try to understand the sun, Perrin. It simply is, and it is not to be understood. You cannot live without it, but it exacts a price. So with women." Bane leaned over to whisper in Pt.8's ear, and they both laughed. From the way they looked at Gaul and him, Perrin did not think he would like hearing what the women found so funny.
It is not that at all.
Loyal rumbled, ears shifting testily. He gave Fail an accusing look, which did not abash her at all. She smiled at him vaguely and went back to her gloves, snugging each finger all over again.
I am sorry, Perrin. She insisted on being the one to call you. That is why we are there.
He pointed to the base of the guiding, where a wide, pit-broken white line ran off. Not to bridge or ramp, but into the darkness.
The waygate at monitoring, Perrin.
Perrin nodded, saying nothing. He was not about to suggest they follow the line, not and have Fail call him down for trying to take over. He rubbed his nose again, absently. That almost imperceptible scent of rankness was irritating. He was not going to make even the most sensible suggestion. If she wanted to lead, let her. But she sat her saddle, fooling with her gloves, obviously waiting for him to speak, so she could make some witty remark. She liked wittiness. He preferred saying what he meant. Irritably, he turned stepper, meaning to go on without her or Loyal. The line led to the way gate, and he could pick out the Aventador leaf that opened it himself. Suddenly his ear caught a muffled click of hooves from the darkness, and the fetid smell slammed home in his mind.
Trollocs!
He shouted. Gaul pivoted smoothly to slide his spear into the black-mailed chest of a wolf-snouted Trolloc, dashing into the light with scythe-like sword upraised. In the same effortless motion, the Aiel pulled his spear point free and sidestepped to let the huge shape fall. More came behind it, though. All goat snouts and boar's tusks, cruel beaks and twisted horns, with curved swords and spiked axes and hooked spears. The horses danced and screamed. Holding his pole lantern high, the thought of facing these things in the dark gave him cold sweat. Perrin clawed for a weapon, swung at a face distorted by a sharp-toothed snout. He was surprised to realize he had pulled the hammer free of its lashings on his saddlebags. But if it did not have the axe's sharp edge, 10 pounds of steel wielded by a blacksmith's arm still sent the Trolloc staggering back, shrieking and clutching a ruined face. Loyal dashed his pole lantern against a goat-horned head, and the lantern broke. Bathed in burning oil, the Trolloc ran howling into the dark. The Ogier flailed about him with a stout pole, a switch in his huge hands, but one that landed with sharp cracks of splintering bone. One of Fail's knives blossomed in an all-too-human eye above a tusked snout. The Aiel danced the spears, having somehow found time to veil themselves. Perrin struck and struck and struck. A whirlwind of death that lasted a minute, 5. It seemed an hour. But suddenly the Trollocs were down, those not already dead, kicking in their death throes. Perrin sucked air into his lungs. His right arm felt as if the weight of the hammer might pull it off. There was a burning sensation on his face, a wetness trickling down his side, or on his leg where Trolloc steel had gotten through. Each of the Aiel had at least one damp patch darkening their brown and gray clothes, and Loyal wore a bloody gash down his thigh. Perrin's eyes went right past them, seeking Fail. If she was hurt. She sat atop her black mare, a knife in her hand ready to throw. She had actually managed to pull off her gloves and tuck them neatly behind her belt. He could not see a wound on her. In all the blood smell, human, Ogier, Trolloc, he could not have picked out hers if she were bleeding. But he knew her scent, and she did not have the pain smell of injury. Bright lights hurt Trolloc's eyes. They did not adapt quickly. Very likely the only reason they were still alive and the Trollocs dead was that abrupt entry from darkness into light. That was all the time they had. A moment's respite, long enough to glance around, take a breath. With a roar like 100 pounds of bone falling into a huge meat grinder, a fade leaped into the light, eyeless stare, a stare of death, black sword flickering like lightning. The horses screamed, trying to bolt. Gaul barely managed to turn that blade with his buckler, losing a slice from the side of it as if the layers of cured bullhide were only paper. He stabbed, eluded a thrust, barely, and stabbed again. Arrows sprouted in the Murdral's chest. Bane and Chiad had thrust their spears through the harness holding the cased bows on their backs, and were using those curved horn bows. More arrows, pincushioning the halfman's chest. Gaul's spear, darting, stabbing. One of Fail's knives suddenly stood out in that smooth, maggot-white face. The Fade would not fall, would not stop trying to kill. Only the wildest dodging kept its sword from finding flesh. Theron bared his teeth in an unconscious snarl. He hated Trollocs as an enemy of his blood, but the Neverborn? It was worth dying to kill a Neverborn. To put my teeth in its throat. Careless of whether he blocked Bane and Chiod's arrows, he guided Stepper closer to the Neverborn's back, forcing the reluctant Dun nearer with reins and knees. At the last instant, the creature spun away from Gaul, seemingly ignoring a spear point that thrust between its shoulders and came out below its throat, staring up at Perrin with the eyeless gaze that sent fear into every man's soul. Too late. Perrin's hammer fell, shattering head and eyeless gaze alike. Even down and virtually headless, the Myrddraal still thrashed, lashing aimlessly with its Thakandar-wrought blade. Stepper danced back, wickering nervously, and suddenly Perrin felt as if he had been doused in icy water. That black steel made wounds even Aes Sedai found hard to heal, and he had ridden in uncaring. My teeth in its light, I have to keep hold of myself. I have to. He could still hear smothered sounds from the darkness at the far end of the island. The clatter of hooved feet, the scrape of boots, harsh breathing and guttural murmurs. More Trollocs. How many he could not say. A pity they had not been linked to the Myrddraal, yet perhaps they might hesitate to attack without it to drive them. Trollocs were usually cowards in their way, preferring strong odds and easy kills. But even lacking a Myrddraal, they could work themselves up to come again eventually. "The Waygate," he said. "We have to get out before they decide what to do without that." He used the bloody hammer to gesture to the still flailing Fade. Fail reined Swallow around immediately, and he was so surprised he blurted, "You aren't going to argue?" "Not when you speak sense," she said briskly. "Not when you speak sense. Loyal?" The Ogier took the lead on his tall, hairy fetlock mount. Perrin backed Stepper after Fail and Loyal, hammer in hand, the Aiel siding him, all with bows ready now. Shuffling hooves and boots followed in the blackness, harsh mutters in a language too rough for human tongues. Back and back, with the mutters edging closer, working up courage. Another sound floated to Perrin, like silk sighing across silk. It sent shivers along his bones. Louder, a distant giant's exhalation, rising, falling, rising higher. "Hurry!" he shouted. "Hurry!"
I am!
Loyal barked.
That sound. Is it?
The light illumine our souls, and the Creator's hand shelter us.
It's opening. It is opening. I must be last. Out, out, but not two. No, Fail.
Perrin risked a glance over his shoulder. Twin gates of apparently living leaves were swinging open, revealing a smoked glass view of mountainous country. Loyal had dismounted to remove the Avendasora leaf to unlock the gate. Fail had their pack animals' leads, and his huge mount's reins. With a hasty shout of, "Follow me, quickly!" she booted Swallow's ribs, and the Tyran mare sprang toward the opening. "After her," Perrin told the Aiel. "Hurry! You cannot fight this." Wisely, they hesitated only a heartbeat before peeling back, Gaul seizing the pack horse's lead line. Stepper came abreast of Loyal. "Can you lock it shut some way? Block it!" A frantic edge had entered the harsh mutterings. The Trollocs had recognized the sound too now. Machin Shin was coming. Living meant getting out of the ways.
Yes,
Loyal said.
yes, but go! Go!
Perrin reined Stepper back quickly toward the gate. Yet before he knew what he was doing, he had thrown back his head and howled, defiance and challenge. Foolish, foolish, foolish. Still he kept his eyes on that pitch dark and backed Stepper into the waygate. An icy ripple slid across him, hair by hair, and time stretched out. The jolt of leaving the ways hit him, as if he had gone from a dead gallop to a stop in one step. The Aiel were still turning to face the waygate, spreading out across the slope with arrows knocked, among low bushes and stunted mountain trees, wind-twisted pine and fir and leatherleaf. Fail was just picking herself up from where she had tumbled from Swallow's saddle, the black mare nuzzling her. Galloping out of a waygate was at least as bad as galloping in. She was lucky she had not broken her neck, and her horses too. Loyal's tall horse and her pack horses were trembling as though hit between the eyes. Perrin opened his mouth, and she glared at him, daring him to make any comment at all, maybe a sympathetic one least of all. He grimaced wryly and wisely kept silent. Abruptly, Loyal came hurtling out of the waygate, leaping out of a dull silvery mirror with his own reflection growing behind him, and rolled across the ground. Almost on his heels, two Trollocs appeared. Ram's horns and snout, eagle's beak and feathered crest. But before they were more than halfway out, the shimmering surface turned dead black, bubbling and bulging, clinging to them. Voices whispered in Perrin's head, 1,000 babbling mad voices clawing at the inside of his skull. Bitter blood, blood so bitter. Drink the blood and crack the bone and suck the marrow, bitter marrow, sweet the screams, singing screams, sing the screams. Tiny souls, acrid souls, gobble them down, so sweet the pain. On and on. Shrieking, howling, the Trollocs beat at the blackness boiling around them, clawed to pull free as it sucked them deeper, deeper, till only one hairy hand remained, clutching frantically. Then only darkness, bulging outward, seeking. Slowly the waygates appeared, sliding together, squeezing the blackness so it oozed back inside between them. The voices in Perrin's head finally stopped. Loyal rushed forward quickly to place not one, but two three-lobed leaves among the myriad leaves and vines. The waygate became stone again, a section of stone wall, carved in intricate detail, standing alone on a sparsely wooded mountainside. Among the myriad leaves and vines was not one, but two Avendasora leaves. Loyal had replaced the trefold leaf from inside on the outside. The Ogier heaved a deep, relieved sigh.
That is the best I can do. It can only be opened from this side now.
He gave Perrin a look at once anxious and firm.
I could have locked it forever by not replacing the leaves. But I will not ruin a waygate, Perrin. We grew the waves and tended them. Perhaps they can be cleansed someday. I cannot ruin a waygate.
It will do, Perrin told him. Had the Trollocs been coming to this waygate, or had it just been a chance encounter? In either case, it would do. Was that? Aiel began unsteadily, then stopped to swallow. Even the Aiel looked shaken for once.
Machin Shin,
Loyal said.
the Black Wind. A creature of the shadow, or a thing grown of the way's own taint. No one knows. I pity the Trollocs. Even them.
Perrin was not sure he did, not even dying like that. He had seen what Trollocs left when they got their hands on humans. Trollocs ate anything, so long as it was meat. Sometimes they liked to keep their meat alive while they butchered. He would not let himself pity Trollocs. Stepper's hooves crunched on gritty dirt as Perrin turned him to see where they were. Cloud-capped mountains rose all around. It was the ever-present clouds that gave them their name, the Mountains of Mist. The air was cool at this altitude, even in summer, especially compared to Tyr. The late afternoon sun set on the western peaks, glinting on streams running down to the river that coursed along the floor of the long valley below. The Manetheren, it was called once it had traveled out of the mountains and much farther west and south. But Perrin had grown up calling the length of it that ran along the south edge of the two rivers the White River, an uncrossable stretch of rapids that churned its waters to froth. The Manetheren, waters of the mountain home. Where bare rock showed in the valley below, or on the surrounding slopes, it glittered like glass. Once a city had stood there, covering valley and mountains. Manetheren, city of soaring spires and splashing fountains, capital of a great nation of the same name, perhaps the most beautiful city in the world, according to the old Ogier tales. Gone now without a trace, except for the all but indestructible waygate that had stood in the Ogier Grove. Burned to barren rock more than 2,000 years ago, while the Trolloc Wars still raged. Destroyed by the one power after the death of its last king, Aemon Alcar Althorin, in his last bloody battle against the Shadow. Amon's Field, men had named that place, where the village called Emmons Field now stood. Perrin shivered. That was long ago. Trollocs had come once since, on winter night, more than a year gone, the night before he and Rand and Matt were forced to flee in the darkness with Moraine. That seemed long ago too now. It could not happen again, with the waygate locked. It's white cloaks I have to worry about, not Trollocs. A pair of white-winged hawks wheeled above the far end of the valley. Perrin's eyes barely caught the streak of a rising arrow. One of the hawks cartwheeled and fell. As Perrin frowned. Why would anyone shoot a hawk up here in the mountains? Over a farm, if it was after the chickens or the geese, but up here? Why would anyone even be up here? Two Rivers people avoided the mountains. The second hawk swooped on snowy wings toward where its mate had fallen, but suddenly it was climbing desperately. A black cloud of ravens burst from the trees, surrounding it in wild melee. And when they settled again, the hawk was gone. Perrin made himself breathe. He had seen ravens and other birds attack a hawk that came too close to their nests before, but he could not make himself believe it that simple this time. The birds had burst up from about where the arrow had risen. Ravens. The shadow used animals as spies sometimes. Rats and others that fed on death, usually. Ravens especially. He had sharp memories of running from sweeping lines of ravens that had hunted him as though they had intelligence. "What are you staring at?" Bayil asked, shading her eyes to peer down the valley. "Were those birds?" "Just birds," he said. "Maybe they were. I can't frighten everybody until I'm sure. Not while they're still shaky from much in shin." He was still holding his bloody hammer, he realized, slick with black murdraw blood. His fingers found drying blood on his cheek, matting in his short beard. When he climbed down, his side and his leg burned. He found a shirt in his saddlebags to clean the hammer before the fade's blood etched the metal. In a moment, he would find out if there was anything to fear in these mountains. If it was more than men, the wolves would know. Bayil began unbuttoning his coat. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Tending your wounds," she snapped back. "I'll not have you bleeding to death on me. That would be just like you, to die and leave me the work of burying you. You have no consideration. Hold still." "Thank you," he said quietly, and she looked surprised. She made him strip off everything but his small clothes, so she could wash his wounds, rub them with ointment fetched from her saddlebags. He could not see the cut on his face, of course, but it seemed small and shallow, if uncomfortably close to his eye. The slash across his left side was over a hand long, though, straight along a rib, and the hole a spear had made in his right thigh was deep. Bayil had to put stitches in that, with needle and thread from her sewing kit. He took it stoically. She was the one who winced at every stitch. She muttered angrily under her breath the whole time she worked, especially while rubbing her dark stinging cream into his cheek, looking almost as if the hurts were hers and his fault. Yet she tied bandages around his ribs and thigh with a gentle hand. It made a startling contrast, her sharp touch and her furious grumbles. Truly confusing. While he donned a clean shirt and a spare pair of breeches from his saddlebags, Bayil stood fingering the slice in the side of his coat. 2 inches to the right, and he would not have left that island. Stamping his feet in his boots, he reached for his coat, and she flung it at him. "You needn't think I will sew that up for you. I've done all the sewing for you I mean to. You hear me, Pt.8? "I didn't ask." "You needn't think it. That's all." She stalked away to help the Aiel tend each other and Royal. That was an odd group, the Ogier with his baggy breeches off, Gaul and Chiad eyeing each other like strange cats, Bayil spreading her ointment and wrapping bandages, and all the while shooting accusing glares at him. What was he supposed to have done now? Perrin shook his head. Gaul was right, he decided. As well try to understand the sun. Even knowing what he had to do now, he was reluctant, especially after what had happened in the ways with the Fade. Once he had seen a man who had forgotten he was human. The same could happen to him. Fool. You only have to hold out a few more days, just till you find the White Cloaks. And he had to know. Those ravens. He sent his mind questing across the valley for the wolves. There were always wolves where men were not, and if they were close, he could talk with them. Wolves avoided men, ignored them as much as possible, but they hated Trollocs for unnatural things and despised Myrddraal with a hatred too deep to hold. If Shadowspawn were in the mountains of mist, the wolves could tell him. But he found no wolves. None. They should have been there, in this wilderness. He could see deer browsing down in the valley. Perhaps it was just that no wolves were close enough. They could talk over some distance, but even a mile was too far. Maybe it was less in mountains. That could be it. His gaze swept across the cloud-capped peaks and settled on the valley's far end, where the ravens had come from. Maybe he would find wolves tomorrow. He did not want to think of the alternatives. Chapter 28. To the Tower of Genjai. With night so near, they had no choice but to camp there on the mountain near the Waygate, in 2 camps. Fail insisted on it.
That is done with,
Loyal told her in a displeased rumble.
We are out of the ways, and I have kept my oath. It is finished.
Fail put on one of her stubborn expressions, with chin up and fists on hips. Leave it alone, Loyal, Aaron said. I'll camp over there a bit. Loyal glanced at Fail, who had turned to the 2 Aiel women as soon as she heard Perrin agree, then shook his huge head and made as if to join Perrin in call. Perrin motioned him back with a small gesture he hoped none of the women noticed. He made it a small bit, less than 20 paces. The Waygate might be locked, but there were still the ravens, and whatever they might presage. He wanted to be near if needed. If Fail complained, she could just complain. He was so set to ignore her protests that it irked him when she made none. Disregarding twinges from his leg and side, he unsaddled Stepper and unloaded the pack horse, hobbled both animals and fitted them with nose bags with a few handfuls of barley and some oats. There was certainly no grazing up here. As to what there was, though, he strung his bow and laid it across his quiver near the fire, slipped the axe free of its belt loop. Gaul joined him in making a fire, a meal of bread and cheese and dried beef, eaten in silence, washed down with water. The sun slid behind the mountains, silhouetting the peaks and painting the undersides of the clouds red. Shadows blanketed the valley, and the air began to grow crisp. Dusting crumbs from his hands, Perrin dug his good green wool cloak out of his saddlebags. Perhaps he had grown more accustomed to Tyr's heat than he had thought. The women were certainly not eating in silence around their shadow-shrouded fire. He could hear them laughing, and the bits of what they said that he picked up made his ears burn. Women would talk about anything. They had no restraint at all. Loyal had moved as far away from them as he could and still be in the light, and was trying to bury himself in a book. They probably did not even realize they were embarrassing the Ogier. They probably thought they were talking quietly enough for Loyal not to hear. Muttering to himself, Aaron sat back across the fire from Gaul. The Aiel seemed to be taking no notice of the chill. Do you know any funny stories? Funny stories? I cannot think of one offhand. Gaul's eyes half turned to the other fire and the laughter. I would if I could. The sun, remember? Perrin laughed noisily and made his voice loud enough to carry. I do. Women. The hilarity in the other camp faded for a moment before rising again. That should show them. Other people could laugh. Aaron stared glumly into the fire. His wounds ached. After a moment, Gaul said, This place begins to look more like a threefold land than most of the wetlands. Too much water still, and the trees are still too big and too many. But it is not so strange as the places called forests. The soil was poor here, where Manetheren had died in fire. The widely scattered trees all stunted and thick-boled, odd wind-bent shapes, not as much as 30 feet high. Perrin thought it about as desolate a spot as he had ever seen. I wish I could see your threefold land someday, Gaul. Perhaps you will. When we are done here, perhaps. Not a chance of it, of course. Not really. He could have told the Ioman that, but he did not want to talk of it now, or think of it. This is where Manetheren stood. You are of Manetheren's blood? This was Manetheren, Aaron replied. I suppose I am. It was hard to believe that the small villages and quiet farms of the two rivers held the last of Manetheren's blood, but that was what Moraine had said. The old blood runs strong in the two rivers, she had said. That was a long time ago, Gaul. We are farmers, shepherds, not a great nation, not great warriors. Gaul smiled slightly. If you say it. I have seen you dance the spears, and Randall Thor and the one called Matt. But if you say it. Baron shifted uncomfortably. How much had he changed since leaving home? Himself and Rand and Matt. Not his eyes and the wolves or Rand's channeling. He did not mean that. How much of what was inside remained unchanged? Matt was the only one who still seemed to be just himself, only more so. You know about Manetheren? We know more of your world than you think, and less than we believed. Long before I crossed the Dragon Wall, I had read books brought by peddlers. I knew of ships, and rivers, and forests. Or thought I did. Gaul made them sound like words in a strange tongue. This is how I envisioned a forest. He gestured at the sparse trees, dwarfed from the height they should have had. To believe a thing is not to make it true. What did the Night Runner, leaf blighters get? You believe it just coincidence they came near this waygate? No, Aaron sighed. I saw ravens down the valley. Maybe that's all they were. But I don't want to take the chance. Not after the Trollocs. Gaul nodded. They could have been shadow eyes. If you plan for the worst, all surprises are pleasant. I could do with a pleasant surprise. Baron felt for wolves again, and again, not nothing. I may be able to find out something tonight. Maybe. If anything happens here, you might have to kick me to wake me. That sounded odd, he realized, but Gaul only nodded again. Gaul, you've never mentioned my eyes, or even given them a second glance. None of the Aiel had. He knew they were glowing golden now in the fire. The world is changing, Gaul said quietly. Ruar, Giron, my own clan chief. The wise ones, too. They tried to hide it, but they were uneasy when they sent us across the Dragon Wall searching for he who comes with the dawn. I think perhaps the change will not be what we have always believed. I do not know how it will be different, but it will be. The Creator put us in a threefold land to shape us as well as to punish our sin. But for what have we been shaped? He shook his head suddenly, ruefully. Melinda, the wise one of the hot springs hold, tells me I think too much for a stone dog.
All right, everyone. I'm gonna call into this live for tonight. I want to thank everyone for stopping by, and I can get this mouse to work. Everyone for stopping by, and everyone who keeps stopping by. I appreciate all y'all support. Until next time, everyone, y'all stay safe.